I believe our zoo is a critical asset to our community. It's the doorway to the world. You could travel 10,000 miles in 100 steps.
Mr. Brown really wanted the world to take notice. He wanted Louisville to be recognized as a place where people want to come work and live and play, and the zoo's been a really big part of that.
Right from the start, in the mid-60s when the zoo was being developed, we were cutting edge.
The first zoo director was a gentleman named Dr. Ivo Poglayan. Built a very visionary zoo for the 60s.
You can look across the giraffe exhibit, you can see lions in the background with no barrier in between.
That was one of those moments in the zoo profession that was a very innovative concept at the time.
As a medium to small size zoo, we were able to innovate and move forward faster than most other facilities. I call it the golden age of zoos and aquariums. The multi-species rotational exhibit was the term that we used, and everybody told us that we couldn't do it.
No other zoo wanted to touch it, so.
We came up with this idea of islands, and then it just kind of exploded.
Could we do something that begins to better mimic what occurs in nature?
The story often was told is that Foster would come up with a crazy idea, and it was the nightmare of the staff to implement it.
Even one of the architects said this could never work.
He and John Walczak were like, well, let's do it. Let's be different. Let's see what we can do.
When we started to work towards the development of islands, then we really started to tell a story. And our story was about conservation and about where the interface between people, animals, and the environment came together.
We took 5 species of animals from Indonesia, both predator and prey, and we're able to move them randomly between 3 outdoor exhibits and an indoor day room, and then their bedrooms back in off-exhibit holding.
This is the way that zoos operate around the world, and to a large extent was pioneered here in Louisville.
128 heart rate.
I'm going to write down the last for sure for your records.
Our goal the day she was born was to make sure that she had the best chance possible to be the best gorilla she could be.
Is that a tree?
Kindy is a great example of how, what that team had to go through, because we lost Mia. With the birth of Kindy, she died within 24 hours of Kindy being born. So they're heartbroken. They're heartbroken. They lost a friend. They lost a really good friend. But they didn't miss a beat.
When Koi Lee took Kindy on, everybody just cheered because we had done what we had meant to do, which was to bring Kindy to a spot where she could be with gorillas and have a family of her own.
Okay, for another smaller, skinnier fish.
I always used to challenge the staff by saying, if the zoo went away, would anybody care?
I honestly can't even imagine what it would look like in Louisville without the zoo. It has definitely been part of my growing up, and I'm glad that my kids have the same opportunity, because a Louisville without the zoo would not be the same Louisville.
Learn about islands and how we must all Grant likes to share stories about when he was little. He shares them so often, though, that the kids now say, I know, you used to do this over here.
Part of our job is to create those memories, and generation after generation after generation.
The zoo is a great initiator of conversations with your children that expand their interest and their awareness for the wild.
See the color of the back? They're called silverbacks because their back is all silver colored.
What makes insects different than maybe Tootsie, who we saw yesterday? There we go. Tootsie had 2 legs, and these have how many legs? They have 6 legs. There are very few words that can actually describe the feeling of seeing a kid going out and making a change in the world based on something that you taught them. The really large, the humps on his head.
The students really gain a lot from learning at the zoo, more so than in the classroom where we don't have hedgehogs and possums and gorillas to look at and learn from.
One of the things that I always try to teach is that they're not just a part of a neighborhood in a suburb or an apartment complex, that they are a part of the entire world and that they have a huge impact, even if they are just one person.
It's an absolute responsibility to let everyone know that what we do here in Louisville, Kentucky can impact a habitat or human beings 10,000 miles away.
Cunnick was discovered on the day that we opened Glacier Run. She was on the North Slope on the Cunnick oil field, and she was an orphan cub. She comes from a place that is very desolate. It's one of the hardest environments in the world to survive in. And she was tough enough to make it long enough to get here so she could share her story.
In cooperation with other zoos and other parks around the world, we are the front line of many conservation projects. We worked with black-footed ferrets. We were one of the first.
They were thought to be extinct as recently as 1981. We're one of just 5 zoos that takes part in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service effort to reintroduce them back into their native habitat.
Without our role in that program, the black-footed ferret very well might not exist anymore.
The Cuban crocodile species survival plan is the first species survival plan that the Louisville Zoo ever initiated. It's a concept that actually came about in the 1970s in zoos, because at that time we realized that a lot of the animals that we held in zoos would likely become extinct in nature. Without zoos, unquestionably, many more species will be lost to extinction.
There's never been a more important time in the history of civilization than there is today for a modern accredited zoo.
We can't be an island to ourselves.
The soul of what we do is conservation education, and that's what gets the staff out of bed every morning.
Its success is only based upon having that local community where those animals exist to support that conservation.
We're privileged to operate for 1,300 of the most demanding guests on the planet.
The zoo cannot be put into a jar and said, that's what the zoo does.
We're a hospital, we're a pharmacy, we're a library, we're a school.
We have to be engaging, we have to be in the community, we have to create the value for this community to continue to support us.
This zoo would not be here today without this wonderful community. If it wasn't for James Graham Brown and Mayor Cogger and every mayor since and every citizen since that has bought a membership or bought a ticket to the zoo or made a donation, we wouldn't be here.
Isn't it wonderful that they had a role that elephants still exist in Africa, in their home range, that gorillas still roam the Congo and Rwanda? How many other people here have that potential in their own way to make a difference in this world? And that's all we're here for.
When you hear those stories, I think people reflect and they go home and they think about what's going to be my planetary legacy.